Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is a terror organization, a terror arm of Iran. At one point, I know the administration talked about designating it as a foreign terrorist organization. I introduced a bill to do that and also a bill to sanction the IRGC. Can you tell me where the administration is on this issue?
Congressman McCaul, we remained very concerned about the IRGC, as you've indicated. I don't have an answer to that question. I can get back to you.
But we, I mean, we are, the IRGC as an organization and a vast majority of its shell companies are already under Treasury sanctions, and we continue to target them very aggressively. The Quds Force within the IRGC, the Quds Force, of course, is the source of the truly evil behavior in support of these various terrorist organizations. Qasem Soleimani leading that group. The thing about the IRGC also that I think really needs to be highlighted is their role in the endemic corruption within the Iranian economy. The case study of how the IRGC alone looted $5 billion from the municipality of Tehran and left them in a complete bind is not getting told to the extent it needs to be. So it's not just the terrorism outside of the country and the fact that they're moving hundreds of millions of dollars for terror operations globally and trying to conduct assassinations in Europe and other things. It's also what they're doing domestically inside the Iranian economy that needs to be showcased.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And yeah, if you could get back to me on that question. They've taken all the sanction relief money and funneled it into terror operations, 40% increase in military in Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, weapons, rockets being manufactured, on and on. On the issue of China, they steal about $600 billion annually from the United States, mostly intellectual property theft, technology transfer theft. They have a 2025 plan to be militarily and economically dominating on the world stage. Has the administration looked at sanctioning China for its theft of intellectual property? 20 million security clearances, including mine. And there were no consequences to that behavior. Yes, ma'am.
Congressman, we are very concerned. As you know, this is the highest priority for the president, is addressing the practices by China that steal our intellectual property, that steal our innovation, the forced technology transfer. Of course, we know of reports of Chinese officials coming here, taking technology back and reverse engineering them. As you may know, we've instituted a 301 initiative, which heavily penalizes China on many different fronts. We are utilizing the World Trade Organization, the WTO, direct bilateral penalties, the tariffs, the serious, significant, historic tariffs imposed upon China. All of these are economic measures intended to demonstrate to China that they need to take us seriously when we have directed them to stop stealing our intellectual property. Our companies should not be forced to transfer their technology in order to do business in China. Chinese companies are able to come do business here freely. Our companies should be able to go there as well. And of course, as you know, with the new FIRMA bill, the update of CFIUS, of the Committee on Foreign Investments in the U.S., we will be screening investment carefully through that mechanism as well, which will address some of the problems with the emerging technologies and the China 2025 program that you have mentioned.
When I was a young federal prosecutor at Justice, I prosecuted Johnny Chung, who led us to the director of Chinese intelligence putting money into the Clinton campaign. It's not the first time a foreign power has tried to influence our election, and that was, in that case, it was about technology transfer. It was China aerospace, satellite technology, and weapons. And so I just highlight that as an illustration. Finally, I think your job, Ms. Singh, is very important because when I talk to a lot of African ambassadors, they talk about China, and you talk about Sri Lanka, and they're in Djibouti, and they over-leverage these African nations and exploit their natural resources with their own workers, not the African workers. And then they can't pay these balloon-type notes at the end of the day, and then they take over ports and things like that. So I hope that you will encourage your ambassadors to be aware of this. And when I asked the question, why do you deal with China, they said, because you're not there. Americans aren't here. And I think your ambassadors have a role to play with respect to economic interests of the United States.
Thank you, Congressman. We hear that message, and in fact, I'm committed to trying to increase our economic engagement with Africa. So as you've indicated, they will have an alternative to China, because that is simply the case in many instances where African nations don't know that they can deal with us rather than the alternative of China. And I commit to you that we will make that a priority at the State Department.
Well, I applaud you for that. Thank you.